This is the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast at hppodcraft.com. Settle in for part one of our coverage of The Challenge from Beyond. Now, this whole podcast and the following podcast were done live, recorded live at Leeds at the Traveling Man Lounge. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
hppodcraft.com.
No, the music.
George Campbell opened sleep-fogged eyes upon darkness and lay gazing out of the tent flap upon the pale August night for some minutes before he roused enough even to wonder what had awakened him. There was in the keen, clear air of these Canadian woods a soporific as potent as any drug. Campbell lay quiet for a moment, sinking slowly back into the delicious borderlands of sleep, conscious of an exquisite weariness, an unaccustomed sense of muscles well used and relaxed now into perfect ease. These were vacation's most delightful moments, after all. Rest after toil in the clear, sweet forest night.
You must have been really tired if you could sleep through that buzz. Just speaking of vacation's most delightful moments, I am having one right now. This is my vacation. I'm very happy to be here in Leeds with this incredible audience.
Who the heck are you?
My name is Chad Pfeiffer, and who are you?
I'm Chris Lackey.
That's right. And we're here at the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
hppodcraft.com.
And we are joined by our frequent star reader, Mr. Andrew Leman.
Hello there.
Now, for people listening, it's not just Chad and I in this room here,
No.
and Andrew.
Not at all.
We've got some other people,
Yeah, that's right.
namely an audience,
That's right.
yeah, and some supporting crew.
That's right.
First of all, I'd like to introduce Paul MacLean. If you don't know Paul, he is the host of the Yogsonpuff podcast at yogsonpuff.com. Paul, do you have anything exciting going on right now over at Yogsonpuff?
Does this work? Yes, it works. Yes, yesterday we launched the Cthulhu World Domination Tour 2012.
What is that?
My goodness.
Okay, what we're doing is we're sending a small cuddly Cthulhu around the world, various parts of the world. He's going to be visiting various members of the Oxford forums. We've had his picture taken in various lovely locations, including Leeds. And everyone who acts as host for Cthulhu has agreed to donate a small donation to their local charity. So it's for charity and to have some fun by sending little Cthulhu around the world.
So watch out for little Cthulhu in a town near you, all over the world.
I think he's going to Otley first, actually.
And also we have, to my right, Corin, Zero of Zeitgeist Zero. If you don't know the band Zeitgeist Zero, you should go to zeitgeistzero.com and hear their music. They are amazing.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And so thank you, Corin, for doing the music tonight.
Thank you, Corin.
The story that we are doing is The Challenge from Beyond.
The Challenge from Beyond.
And while we usually simply cover H.P. Lovecraft stories or stories as he's rewritten with collaborators, this one actually has a big group of people who participate. And in fact, that opening paragraph that we heard was by an author named C.L. Moore. And there's a couple other authors that we'll be hearing from: A. Merritt, Robert E. Howard, and Frank Belknap Long.
And also H.P. Lovecraft.
And also H.P. Lovecraft, who, for some strange reason, has the longest section of the story. What's the background on this? I mean, how did this even come about, this sort of...
Well, this story was the brainchild of Julius Schwartz, who was the editor of Fantasy Magazine at the time. Now, Julius went on later to become editor-in-chief of DC Comics.
Which I didn't know until you told me that.
I didn't know that until recently either. Well, anyway, he had this idea for the 3rd anniversary of the magazine of doing this round robin. So he was going to do 2 stories called Challenge from Beyond.
What's a round robin?
A round robin is where one person starts off the story, hands it over to another writer, and then they just pick up from there. And they can do whatever they...
So it's like serial collaboration.
It is like serial collaboration. That makes sense.
Well, have you ever done one of these things before? Like a writing class or an acting class? Or
No.
I've heard of the pictorial equivalent, and I think that is called an exquisite corpse, if I'm not mistaken. It's a deal where you have like a piece of paper and you fold it into 4 panels or something, and one artist will start a drawing on the first panel and then fold it over so all you can see is the very edge, and then the next artist will start from that edge and make more drawing, and you keep going until the whole paper is filled up, and then everybody gets to see what the drawing is a drawing of.
And how does it usually come out?
In my experience, not particularly well.
Well, in my experience doing these group, or we used to, in English class, we do these kind of things where one student would tell about 30 seconds of a story and then pass it on to the next one, and you'd all try to continue the same story, but I hated the exercise because you'd start getting something really good going.
And then they get dirty?
I wish it got dirty. Then it would be interesting. But no, normally what would happen is some people that had very limited imagination would bring in like franchise characters, you know. So you have a great princess in the castle, and then Superman would show up for no reason,
Right.
or Tarzan,
Yeah.
or
You're not. This sounds great to me.
Right?
Yeah, this sounds amazing.
Superman or Dorothy.
I want to read these stories.
No, it was always terrible. So I came to this story with the feeling that it might not be that great, or it might be lacking some continuity.
Well, we'll see. Well, anyway, there was two ideas for the story. One was a sci-fi, and one was weird. For the weird story, it was going to be more long, Merritt, H.P. Lovecraft, and an undecided fifth person. And for the sci-fi version of the same name, called Challenge from Beyond, it was Stanley G. Weinbaum, Daniel Wandry, who we've talked about on the show before, E. Doc Smith, Hal Vincent, and Murray Leinster. So I've never read it, and it was hard to find on the web. Has anybody ever read the other Challenge from Beyond? No.
I like how you say one was sci-fi and one was weird. I would have such a hard time explaining that difference to somebody. What was it?
Are you putting me on the spot right now?
Yeah, well, I am kind of. I mean, like when I read this, it kind of seems sci-fi to me.
Yes.
I think back then, there was a more sharp distinction between those two genres. Sci-fi was, I think, much more technologically oriented, and weird had a little more of the fantastical element and a little more of the occult thing. I think that distinction has been mellowed over time, but back then I think it was a sharp distinction.
Do people know what weird fiction is anymore?
Nowadays?
Yeah.
No.
You're not seeing a lot of weird fiction bookshops down in the corner.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely.
Well, this is the weird one that we're reading right now.
Yes, this is the weird one. And how this started, like I said, Julian Schwartz, it was his idea. He got these guys together. First, Moore did the first section of it, and it was handed off to Merritt. Now, Merritt was the kind of the biggest celebrity writer in this particular story. And when Long, first, then Long got it. Then after Long wrote it, sent it to Merritt. He said, oh, this person didn't know what they're doing. This is terrible. This isn't in the spirit of the round robin. So I want this gone. And since Merritt was the big celebrity at the time, they cut it out. And Long was off the story. And Lovecraft, after reading Merritt's part, thought it was terrible. And so he goes, okay, I'm going to come in here and make a real story out of this. And then he gets Robert E. Howard, who was a friend of his, to do the next part. And then because Lovecraft was really good friends with Long, he got Long to come in and tie everything up.
Right, so Long ends up at the end of the
He's
story.
eventually back in on it, yeah.
Okay, well, those authors maybe we'll talk about a little bit more after we get through the content of the story. Some background on them.
Correct.
Why don't we get into it? That's when I do a transition usually.
Oh, yeah, very good. Those two bits. Is that how you do them?
What's that?
Is that how you do them?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
exactly
awesome.
how I do it. This actually really closely resembles how I usually record the podcast. The only difference is that the 50 people I have in my apartment are very quiet. But it's how I prefer to do it, is staring at people I don't know so well. So, okay.
So the story starts off as from that reading that we heard from Andrew. It's George Campbell. He's on a camping trip out in Canada, and he wakes up in his tent and looks at the night sky and goes back to sleep. Then he's a geologist and he's on vacation. He's on a 3-month sabbatical out in the wilds of Canada, just enjoying nature, getting away from the hubbub of the city.
Right. He's a geologist.
He's a geologist.
So even though this is the C.L. Moore section, we do set it up with the Lovecraftian protagonist.
Yeah.
He's an intellectual, he's an academic, he's out to get some R&R from what he's been doing. He kind of hates his students. You get the idea he's a geologist. It's a funny character. He's a geologist because he loves geology, but he hates having to teach geology to these idiots. So it's a good Lovecraftian protagonist. He's in his tent at night.
Yes, and he's sleeping and he hears this noise outside. He thinks it's some kind of night critter, so he wants to scare it off. It's in his tin cans and things. He reaches over and grabs this rock, but it feels strange. And as he looks at it, it's not any ordinary rock. It's a cube.
Right. it seems like it might have been, well, he later says it's made of quartz. Right. So it is a rock, but it's been smoothed in some unnatural way so that it's become a cube. By the way, I like that little creature that he was going to scare off just kind of falls out of the story. But
no.
When he was first described, it said a dark, anonymous little night beast. Which I thought had a lot of potential, and I was really hoping that something would come of it.
It doesn't.
Spoiler alert, nothing does. But it's just sort of an inciting incident for him to try and pick up a rock.
Yeah.
Which is just right outside of his tent. But this really crazy artifact is right outside of the door of his tent, so I don't really know how he didn't come across it while he was setting up the tent, but he must have just been particularly sleepy.
Exactly.
But as you say, it's made of quartz, it's a perfect cube, square, 4x4. It's very worn down because it's very old.
But there's something in the center of this quartz. It's a little tiny disc and it has these strange glyphs on it. He thinks maybe they might be Sumerian, but he realizes if it's quartz, it has to be tens of millions of years old, so it couldn't be Sumerian.
And he knows about ancient legends where, they used to say that quartz crystals were just ice that never melted.
Right. So he goes, well, maybe that was it. And then he also thinks it could have come from a meteorite, from another civilization. But I'll worry about this in the morning. It's time to go to bed.
The reason he decides to go to bed is because he felt his ears going hot at the luridness of his own imagination. So this rock has really sparked some feelings and some strange kind of... I thought it was a really strange sentence, actually, because nothing he had said thus far seemed very lurid to me. There's nothing lurid about, maybe this is really old.
No.
Dirty. So, he flashes off the light.
But then for a second, it seems like the rock glows a little bit longer than the light.
Right. It's sort of reminded me of when you get a glow-in-the-dark toy of some kind, and then you have to hold it up to the light, and then you do the first test because you're so excited to see if it glows or not, or if it's a t-shirt or garment or something like that. Then you get under the covers and you see if it glows, and you do that for a couple hours. It's like I often do. Anyhow, that's our setup, and
that concludes CL Moore.
Right. Now we get into a merits section. And what was it about Merritt? Merritt was the big deal.
He's the big deal at the time, yeah. We'll talk about Merritt at the end.
Okay, right, sorry. But this should be the star player.
Yes, this should be the awesome part of the story because he is the most renowned author of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So Merritt picks up the story, and it's funny because he says, you know what, I'm going to go to sleep in the morning, and then I'll ponder it then. And then Merritt immediately does the first mistake of the round robin, and he says no to what the former author said. He says, you know what, I couldn't sleep, I'm going to stay up all night and look at this thing. So it's a refusal right out of the gate. And that's what he does, but I think he starts playing with his flashlight, right? Shining it on the thing.
Right, yes.
And then pulling it off, shining it on the thing, pulling it off. It does seem to be glowing.
And it also makes a strange sound.
That's right.
He heard a sound. It was the very ghost of a sound, like the ghosts of harp strings being plucked with ghostly fingers. He bent closer. It came from the cube.
I feel like the next word should just be ghost.
Yeah, just ghost, period. That is the most usage of the word ghost in a sentence I've ever seen.
Ghostly fingers.
Ghost of a sound, ghosts of harp strings.
Ghostly harp string.
Yes.
Yeah, he really works the ghosts.
He does. That guy knows how to work a ghost. They often said about Merritt. Well, now there is a little commotion in the brush, right?
Yeah. He thinks it's an animal maybe killing another animal. Very primal.
Oh, you know what? Maybe that is where my little guy went. Yeah.
He gets killed?
No, he was the one that he threw the rock at, and then he goes out and he gets in a tussle with another animal.
Sure.
So it's kind of the B story, the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
As far as I can say.
It's great foreshadowing for the end, too.
Exactly. Okay.
It is. Anyway.
See, I'm discovering stuff up here. All right, so keep going. What's going on now?
So he wants to investigate, and he goes out to try and see what it is, and he can't quite figure out what's going on. But then when he goes back, he sees the stone is glowing, and for a moment he's going to reach and touch it. But then he goes, wait, maybe I shouldn't touch it. Maybe I shouldn't have. But I'm going to shine my light on it and see what happens, and shine it off, and it seems to glow a bit more. And then he comes to the conclusion that what's causing this thing to glow is his electric light beam and the fact that he's looking at it.
Right. Which seems kind of silly because how would he know it was glowing unless he was looking at it? Well, I mean, he's establishing
Right.
It's like me saying, my neighbor screams every time I look at her. I'm also at her window and it's midnight, and I should be staring in there, but I know that partly it's because I'm looking.
Yes. It's ridiculous. Might as well have leprechauns involved in there. It doesn't really make any sense.
But funny nonetheless. It's also neither hot nor cold, yeah?
Yes.
Oh yeah, when he holds it, it's as though he's not holding anything at all.
Right.
Because it has no temperature?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
The horrifying touch of a lukewarm object. He picks it up off the floor. He takes it back to the tent so he can study it a little more. He's got a table in there, that's right.
Yeah, he takes it to his
This tent, does it seem to you guys that this tent keeps getting bigger and bigger? Every time he goes in it, there's more stuff in the tent. Now there's like furniture in the tent.
Yes.
That's right.
The first time I read it, I pictured a pup tent.
Yeah.
But by now he's got a desk and a chair
Yeah.
and a laboratory and
The laboratory. Tapestries on this one. Well, and then he keeps shining the light. I mean, this section sucks. He keeps shining the light on it, makes it glow some more. We could have said this in 3 sentences.
Yeah.
He hears the ghostly music again. He gets touched by some ghostly fingers, and then the crystal.
the crystal part fades away.
Yeah.
Just the disc is there, and he pulls him into some kind of void, and that
Right.
ends. That's it.
That's pretty much it.
That's what
But it
Mary
isn't-
contributes to this.
That's right. But it's an important. That's the launch pad for what is about to be the
Right.
H.P. Lovecraft section
Exactly.
of the story.
As the mist-blurred light of the sapphire suns grew more and more intense, the outlines of the globe ahead wavered and dissolved to a churning chaos. Its pallor and its motion and its music all blended themselves with the engulfing mist, bleaching it to a pale steel color and setting it undulantly in motion. And the sapphire suns, too, melted imperceptibly into the graying infinity of shapeless pulsation. Lovecraft has entered the story.
That's
Yeah.
right. You know that when you hear undulantly, there's only one writer who can be responsible. So by looking at that disc, he's suddenly whoosh, kind of flying through some sort of void.
But he has no physical form anymore.
That's right.
He's just a consciousness. Yes.
Because if it was physical, he feels that this would rip him apart because he's moving so fast. It feels like he's going faster even than the speed of light. So this is some sort of astral voyage.
Exactly. And this is so intense. He does something very surprising of a Lovecraft character. He faints.
When I printed the story out, Lovecraft's section was 3 pages long.
Yeah, it's about three-fourths longer than everybody else's
Yeah.
portion of the story. Yeah.
And 3 times the amount, well, actually, for those 3 pages, there's like a fainting on every page.
Yeah.
There are three fainting spells in this.
So he's a conscious, just a consciousness, no body, floating in this gray void.
Mm-hmm.
And he...
Oh, there's a so he doesn't know what's going on, right? Why he's flying through this
right.
void.
Yeah.
And then it says here, he suddenly has a... Gosh, I kind of remember something, though. Wait, let me think about it. It says it had come from some vague flash or remote recollection. Some cell group at the back of his head had a familiarity which was fraught with dim terror. So suddenly something occurs to him about what might be happening.
Yeah, just a very dim memory. Just kind of a general gist.
That then becomes incredibly specific for about 3 pages.
Which then occupies the next few pages of the story. So what is this cell group in his mind? What is it dimly recollecting?
He remembers finding something. He remembers that something was found in England 30 years prior, and it was called the Elkdown Shards. Now there was this clergyman in Sussex, Arthur Brooke Winters Hall, who claimed to know where the glyphs came from, and it was a prehistoric civilization that was talked about in these occult books. Now this was the first guy with the 4 names, Arthur Brooke Winters Hall.
Yeah.
Was the first one to translate these glyphs, these inscriptions.
Of the Elkdown shards, which
Yes.
are these clay kind of, what are they, chips or...
Yeah, it reminded me of like the Nakal text, which I think was the mysterious, carven stele that Churchwards thought he found in Tibet that would, reveal all the secrets of Mu and Atlantis and all that stuff. So it's the sort of same idea of the Elkdown shards. That was what I got out of it.
Yeah, and that's probably what inspired it.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah. Well, and you were saying it reminded you of the Piltdown.
Well, just
because of the name.
Yes,
but then we were wondering, is Elkdown, is that in English?
Yeah, English people. Is Elkdown a real place?
No.
Cool. No. All right.
Well, there we go.
Well,
There we go. Thanks.
nice theory, Chris. Anyway, the translation of these ancient fragments has a very detailed story, and so it begins.
As the story went, there dwelt on a world, and eventually on countless other worlds of outer space, a mighty order of worm-like beings whose attainments and whose control of nature surpassed anything within the range of terrestrial imagination. They had mastered the art of interstellar travel early in their career and had peopled every habitable planet in their own galaxy, killing off the races they found.
Yeah. Murderous worm people from another galaxy.
And they want to kind of master time and space and study other cultures. They can't physically travel these huge distances all over the universe, but they can cast their minds forward using these cubes.
Yes, but how it works is that the cubes have to. Are we gonna?
Is that what?
Wait, that's a quote.
Yeah. We just want to do it that way?
Yeah, let's do it that way.
All right. Let's hear the actual text then.
The mind that noticed the cube would be drawn into it by the power of the disk, and would be sent on a thread of obscure energy to the place whence the disk had come, the remote world of the worm-like space explorers across stupendous galactic abysses. Received in one of the machines to which each cube was attuned, the captured mind would remain suspended without body or senses until examined by one of the dominant race. Then it would, by an obscure process of interchange, be pumped of all its contents. The investigator's mind would now occupy the strange machine, while the captive mind occupied the interrogator's worm-like body. Then, in another interchange, the interrogator's mind would leap across boundless space to the captive's vacant and unconscious body on the transgalactic world, animating the alien tenement as best it might, and exploring the alien world in the guise of one of its denizens.
Now, Chad,
Yeah.
something about this is a little familiar to me.
It is. It sounds basically like the plot of The Shadow Out of Time.
Yes.
Which we just covered.
Which was written before this,
Yeah.
but not published. So I think.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't
Yeah, no. So Lovecraft, I think, was kind of going, well, probably nothing's going to happen with that. So let me get that story out.
See, now I feel bad though, because earlier I was like, how lazy is that? Why did you have to use the same plot again? Everybody, but well, it wasn't published. Okay.
In his defense, though, he puts in the Yithians. They come up a little bit later. Yeah.
Right, the Indians were the aliens in The Shadow Out of Time, and were doing basically the exact same thing. They were exchanging bodies with people over vast expanses of time so that they could study other cultures.
They'd swap bodies with them. Now, what happens with these guys, these worm people, to get these, this seems really practical to me, but to get these crystals off to other planets, they just shoot them out into space and hope that they land on a habitable planet.
Right.
Which,
But, I mean, we do that, don't we? Don't we shoot probes into deep space? If we don't, we should, guys.
yes. Well, I mean, Voyager.
You heard it here.
Voyager is a probe that just went out of our solar system not too long ago, and that's not going any place in particular.
Okay.
And we all know how that's going to end up.
Are you talking about?
Actually,
Are you talking about what Stephen Hawking
You
said?
know what I'm talking
Or are you talking about Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where
Both of them are horrible outcomes.
yeah, neither of us go very well.
do you remember that, Chad? With V'ger from Star Trek: The Motion Picture?
Oh, yeah. They just did a kind of a parody of it on Futurama where they found a probe called Vagina that was... it's not my joke. This is a G-rated show.
Yes.
Well, you know, these guys are really the worm people. Strangely, they're kind of jerks. They, when they would find another race capable of space travel, they would exterminate them.
Yes.
So it's not like they were going to other worlds, they say for diplomatic reasons.
Yeah, diplomatic. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. But you would think maybe they'd go to other cultures and they'd say, oh, these people are inferior, so we want to destroy them. But they're actually people that might be catching up to them. They don't want the competition.
Right. Yeah.
That's horrible.
They're nipping it in the bud before it gets out of control.
They shouldn't do that.
Well, then if you do that, if you're lazy like that, then they'll get better than you and kill you.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
It happens.
Well, sometimes they even move out or they start a new civilization. They'll just go occupy everybody on a planet.
Oh yeah, they'll just take over the entire civilization.
But even then, it's kind of limited because they can't make more of their fancy world-dominating cubes anywhere except
Exactly.
at their home planet.
Yeah.
But if they're going to do that, that means that everybody on that civilization or that culture had to look into the cube, right?
Yes.
So how do you think that went?
It seems like a very tedious way of taking over a planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, did one guy get it and go, guys, you all have to look at this? And then they all went out and ran a campaign, or did they do it just through television, or how would they get everybody to look into this cube?
Yeah, well, there's a property of the cube. The way it was designed was to attract beings of the appropriate intelligence to look into it, according to Lovecraft.
Right.
One of the things, though, I think
you just solved it all.
Yeah, there you go. The Indians, which I think was really cool, when one of them found the cube.
The only one that actually landed on Earth landed on Earth at the time when the Yithians were the dominant form of life here.
Yes.
And they recognized it. When they saw what it was doing, they said, hey, wait a minute. That's what we do.
So yeah, and they got really cutthroat about it.
Yeah.
And all the Yithians that had worm guys in their bodies, they just killed them.
Executed.
They executed all of them and said, well, too bad Yithians that are stuck in worm bodies, you're on your own. We gotta protect their civilization.
They got cutthroat about it is a funny way to describe it. You know how that goes when time traveling races and cats. Well, so the Yithians did that, and a result of that is that these worm folks hate Earthlings.
They hate Earthlings.
Yes. It's not our fault. It's not humans' fault.
No.
They're mad.
No.
Yeah.
And the cube was then put away for safekeeping by the Indians. They don't want to destroy it because it's technology and they are collectors of information and knowledge and things. So they put the cube away, but over time, eons,
They had their own problems to deal with. They got run out of town, and the cube was left apparently lying on the ground somewhere in Canada.
Yep.
Yes. They shot forward into the future to occupy a race of beetle men.
Right. From Shadow of Time, yeah.
It's so crazy, but that's basically what happened. Now, so after sussing out this dim recollection from the back of his mind that has all this incredibly detailed information, Campbell realizes I found that cube in my camping area, just kind of laying out. Now he feels he's been shooting through time and that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's in this void.
He's in the void, right?
Yeah, just kind of sitting around thinking on his own thoughts. He has no idea how long he's been there. Hours, days, years.
Right.
He's lost all sense of time. And then he senses another presence in there with him. Now, if you remember from the description that Andrew was reading, that's their modus operandi. They get in with him, and then they start kind of going through his mind to learn about the civilization. So they take all of his thoughts about culture and his knowledge of history so that they can be ready when they take over the body to get in and cause whatever mischief they want on the planet.
Yeah. Is Flash Gordon a popular movie? You guys see Flash Gordon? Yes? People? Yeah?
Yeah.
There's a scene in there where Zarkov gets all of his memories sucked out of his brain. I think that they show like a Hitler rally and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That used to scare me for some reason when I watched that movie.
It's creepy.
There's something about somebody being able to reach in and take out all those really personal things. And this in particular, I would be so embarrassed if I was the one that the aliens got.
Now they call it Facebook. We do it to ourselves. We just put it all out there.
Yeah, that's true. They wouldn't need to do it. Social networking. Well, I just imagine that they would get some accurate details about the world and history, but most of it would just be complete BS. I don't know, the stupid things I think that are true that I don't tell anybody, but I think.
Right.
My terrible geographical knowledge and historical knowledge.
Well, just the other day we were over at the Bronte Museum and we were scratching our heads going, when did the Bronte sisters live?
Yeah.
When were they?
The 1800s?
Was that the 1400s?
Right. All I know is there were castles.
So these worm guys, they come back going, the Bronte sisters. Well, I mean, what they probably know is that they come with the information that humans like looking at naked humans.
Right.
Yeah.
If they got to me.
Yeah.
Known Chris a long time. So that's the first stage.
Yeah.
Suck all the memories and the thoughts out, and then there's the replacement. That's what's going to happen next.
So he finds himself lying on some kind of slab in this room with a very high ceiling. He tries to move his arms, but he can't feel his arms. He doesn't know what's happening. He tries to see, but open his eyes, but he doesn't have eyes to open, and he gets this weird sense, which is neither sight nor hearing, or it's some kind of new sense, and that's how he's able to perceive this room around him. Mm-hmm. And there's no furniture, there's low tables, and those glyphs, that glyph that was on inside that crystal, they're all over the walls.
And he can see all of the walls at once.
Yes.
Somehow.
Oh yeah. It's like he's got 360-degree vision or something.
Yes. Yeah. But the actual nightmare element is when something starts advancing. He sees something through a slit in the wall coming over to him.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Find out next week, or just read The Challenge from Beyond. Special thanks to Paul MacLean over at yogsauthor.com and Corin Zero of Zeitgeist Zero. Check them out at zeitgeistzero.com. And a special thanks to Teresa Dead, also of Zeitgeist Zero, for all of her help and support at the live show. Without her, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So thank you, Teresa. And another reminder, this weekend I will be doing a signing of the Lovecraft Anthology Volume 2 at the York Traveling Man, that's York in Yorkshire, from 1 to 2, and at 3 o'clock I'll be doing a short talk about adapting Lovecraft, and on the 21st of April I will be at the Comica Comic Book Convention in London, so come down and check that out. Following weekend, the 28th, I will be in Newcastle at the Traveling Man store up there. For more information on all of those things, just check out the show notes. Tune in next week for part 2 of our coverage of The Challenge from Beyond, live in Leeds. I'm Chris Lackey, and you're listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast at hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.